What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering, and of course, the fans are the problem. You know, the very people that give their hard-earned money to the Hollywood elite. It's our problem. We are toxic. That we would dare to let a company who produces a product know that there is a product we would like. That is privilege. That is entitlement. That is toxicity. And that is, according to Vox Media, writing, Justice League is reminds us which fans' voices get heard, which is absolutely ridiculous. Let me just destroy this entire narrative about toxic, entitled fans in the first 30 seconds. They're going to talk about the Snyder Cut fans, right? We got the Snyder Cut after a million years of asking and having to pay $20 for it. Okay, wow. Thanks for bending the knee. On the other hand, Gina Carano was canceled by people that don't even watch Star Wars, but Lucasfilm listened to them. So who's actually getting their way? The HBO Max release of the fabled Snyder Cut happened thanks to a mix of entitlement, harassment, and privilege. It's hard to overstate just how giddy many geeks are about the long-awaited HBO Max release of the once mythical Snyder Cut. It's true that fans have spent 4 years demanding director Zack Snyder's version for the 2017 DCEU universe, Justice League, to see the light of day. But as the film itself becomes available to the public, so too did breathless, over-the-top accolades. A lifetime's worth of iconography, operatic synthesia, insanity, intensity A to Z. Director and actor Baruchel declared, setting aside the argument that the Snyder Cut is mostly just pretty good. As Vox critic Alex Abad Santos sagely notes, improving on something as horrendous as the original Justice League isn't difficult. It's important to understand what's on the other side of this film's praise, namely 4 years of toxic harassment and a parade of troubling online behavior from male fans that has far more in common with the abusive right-wing campaigns like Gamergate and most of the mainstream geek culture in 2021. Now, that word that lets you know exactly where we're at. There is no such thing as mainstream geek culture. You know, I've often said that the Big Bang Theory and Marvel have ruined geek culture. You're not a geek if you watch The Big Bang Theory. Like, I understand if you think it's funny, I'm not going to, but understand that The Big Bang Theory is doing the exact same thing that happened to geeks when we were in high school, people that were into nerdy things, right? The Big Bang Theory is making fun of geeks and nerds. That's the same crap that we dealt with when we were all in high school or 8th grade, getting made fun of for playing Dungeons and Dragons, for liking comic books or action figures, things like that. It's the same thing. The Big Bang Theory has done nothing to advance geek culture other than commoditize it and monetize it and abuse it, like it's been since the very beginning. The reason geek culture exists is because of a rejection of mainstream. Geek culture is not something that wants to be mainstream. I don't think I've ever met someone who played D&D that just would long for it to have a comedic television show on it. There weren't people that played Magic the Gathering with me that just longed for a cringe Magic the Gathering television show. Nobody wants that. We want to enjoy our hobby, and we want there to be some work to finding it. We want there to be some work to understanding it and getting it, because then you appreciate it. Gatekeeping isn't always a bad thing. The Snyder Cut is a toxic conspiracy theory that's somehow been triumphantly reframed as a glorious myth. Sad? Salty, bro? Zack Snyder's Justice League, aka the Snyder Cut, did not exist in any sort of finished form when the rumors began to spread, but director Zack Snyder, who was originally at the helm in 2017, stepped away from the project for personal reasons. He did not complete the personal director's first cut, and he would later, as he would later recall the Vanity Fair, the fabled cut existed nowhere except as footage stored on his own laptop and was devoid of visual effects, music, and all the fine-tuning that make a movie a movie. Well, that's why they spent $70 million. Over the next few years, Snyder himself picked up on the theme using the hashtag and posting clips of the film that he would have made. By 2019, what had been a niche subset of the fandom had grown into a major fan crusade. Yeah, I'm sure Zack Snyder, heaven forbid he look at something and say, boy, I could probably make some money. I could probably earn some money if HBO, Warner Media were to come out and say that the Snyder Cut's happening. Plenty of earnest pleas came with the hashtag, but also vitriol that was extreme even for Twitter, including mean campaigns targeted at critics, HBO Max, Warner Brothers, and its employees. Former DC film chief Jeff Johns left the platform entirely after receiving endless Twitter criticisms, and director James Gunn, who was hired to write and direct the Squad sequel for the studio, discovered that with his new gig came with at least one threat from a user with a Batman avatar. Well, if this operation from rewriting Ripley has taught us anything, who even knows if that person is an actual fan or not? You know what I mean? People that hate, if you don't think that there are like left-wing and right-wing journalists who have sock accounts that just create their own stories, I've got a bridge to sell you. We've seen over the past few years what happened in industries essentially ignored barrages of meanness as fan enthusiasm. The Hugo Awards, Sad Puppies, and the Ghostbusters reboot. Everything related to The Last Jedi, and of course, the Snyder Cut, they continued. They pointed out that even as creators, journalists, and other fans often experience intense meanness from these kinds of fan campaigns, the media had a tendency to reframe that behavior as some sort of enthusiasm, which is very troubling. Excuse me? Baking powder? You guys have been writing hit pieces on the release of Snyder Cut fandom since its inception. I don't see hundreds of journals claiming the triumphant history, celebrating the Snyder Cut fandom. Where? To be fair, some Snyder fans, one contingent of the release of Snyder Cut campaign raised $15,000 for charity. But that moment of altruism arguably served to validate the movement's more troubling aspects and led outright glorification of the fans. Ooh, the fans. Writing for The Ringer in 2019, Rob Harvia described the Snyder Cut campaign as an arbitrary and fearsomely dedicated, fascinating, bewildering, possibly hopeless, and legitimately inspiring. Wow, you know a bunch of words and you put them together. Congrats. You see here, Warner Media boss Ann Sarnoff condemns toxic Snyder Cut fans, forgets Warner Media promotes defunding the PD and ending families. In an interview with Variety discussing Zack Snyder's Justice League and the future of DC films, Variety Brent asked, "There's also been a toxic side to the fandom, with reports that critics and some of your executive have received mean words online. What's your reaction to that?" We're not tolerating any of that. That behavior is reprehensible, no matter what franchise you're talking about or what business you're talking about. It's completely unacceptable. She continued, "I'm very disappointed in the fans that have chosen to go the negative place in regards to DC. With regards to some of our executives, it's just disappointing because we want this to be a safe place. Won't somebody think of the CEOs?" The Warner Media CEO went on, "We want DC to be a fandom that feels safe and inclusive. We want people to be able to speak up for things they love, but we don't want it to be a culture of canceling things that any small faction isn't happy with." Really? You mean the incorrect small faction? Smartenough is right that people should not be sending mean words to... Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree. This is coming from the same very company, in October, they announced they inked a deal with BLM founder Patrisse Cullors as self-described trained Marxist. I mean, this is the same company that puts together this garbage. The idea that any fandom that exists, I'm just going to put it this way, any fandom that exists of primarily males is almost always maligned. That's just the way the media works. It's just another vehicle to smear fandoms, to smear men, really. Where were all the articles calling out the fandoms for 50 Shades of Grey? You see here, it's difficult to find a similar level of hype and breathlessness and anticipation attaching to a campaign for a movie that catered to women. For instance, imagine the 50 Shades of Grey fandom full of older female romance fans suddenly began demanding 60 Shades of Grey. Well, they don't even... That's 60-year-old women aren't on Twitter. Can you even conceive of a journalist writing in 2021 that a campaign to, I don't know, release the secret ending of Twilight where Bella ends up with Jacob is arbitrary and fearsomely dedicated, fascinating, and bewildering? I sure can't. Oh, men. As if there aren't women in this release of Snyder Cut fandom. Attacking fandoms is an easy way to get a bunch of clicks for a lazy urinalist. Hating fans is just what big corporations do. They want your money, but they don't want to be seen taking it. Remember that next time you decide to go to the movies, instead of maybe jumping in a boat and viewing that video free of charge. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.